Hey, this is my first video. My name's Kyle. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I think everyone says that in their first video. Moving along. What are you going to see on this channel? You're going to see a lot of TV, movie reviews, fandom related things ranging from fan fiction to reviewing reviews of different pairings, ship discussions of shipping, a lot of different things depending on what's in my head because I'm viewing this. I'm going to try and structure it, but knowing me, this will not end up being structured at all. And the lighting's horrible, but I'll get better. It'll be a process, like everything, especially right now, because what else are we going to do with COVID? That said, a lot of it'll be like fan fiction, fandom related stuff. If you don't know what that is, I'll explain later, probably in another video. Um, that said, I've kind of had this channel for 10 years, but never did anything with it. But kind of feel at this point it's a good time to do that. My lighting's horrible. I'm gonna not focus on that. Gonna try hard. Okay. This first video is really about It Chapter 2. I saw both of them around a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. That's kind of what gave me the idea to start this channel because I had a lot of problems with the second one. Now, looking at the first and second one, the first one is a lot more emotional, that really has that horror aesthetic that a lot of people liked about it. It was very fresh, original, because the original It miniseries was back in the 80s with Tim Curry, who did a great job, but also was a bit hindered by the budgetary constraints of a miniseries and it being the 80s. And horror as a genre had just really gotten off the ground in a mainstream sense. By mainstream, I mean looking at The Exorcist and stuff that happened in the 70s. With the first one, you had a lot smaller set pieces. By that, I mean you didn't have those big scenes that really utilize the special effects in the same way that they did in the second one. Specifically, in the second one, you had that whole scene where they had the cascading balloons, which was a lot more ambitious. I think partly because they realized, oh, this movie will actually work and attract people. Granted, you had the problem of the second one making only $460 million versus the first installment's 703, probably. Don't quote me on that. You can just look it up online. It's better that way. But I digress. A lot of what I wanted to discuss is that while you had the first one, which was very character focused and focused on a losers club and sort of their bond, you didn't get as much character drive in that, which you got a lot more in the second one because it was longer and you had the characters already established. You didn't have to go and establish the characters because you already had that happen in the first movie. With the first one, which leads in the second one, but it's more obvious in the second one, is the love triangle. Now, love triangles are something which can serve one of two purposes. Either they are put in there to advance the narrative in a positive way, or they will impact the narrative in a negative way. A great example of a negative love triangle would be in Twilight, where you had a love triangle that was put in place really, while it did serve a purpose, the purpose it served did not truly advance the narrative beyond making the main character of Twilight useless to a certain extent for the majority of the book series and movies. But I have a lot of issues with love triangles. I think they are not helpful to character development. They're not helpful from a story perspective or an audience perspective. However, they can be helpful to an audience if they want to root for one character over the other. But that is not helpful when you're really looking at wanting to root for characters. That's all well and good, but if we're being realistic here, we're not. We're wanting one pairing, we're wanting one couple. We don't really want, I mean, sometimes you might want that, but a lot of times love triangles just create unnecessary conflict, especially this one in It Chapter 2. A lot of it hinged on the fact that Beverly didn't know who wrote her that postcard, and she assumed it was Bill. It wasn't Bill. I could be wrong. should have probably rewatched the video and rewatched the movie for this video, but I didn't. When it was actually Ben. Yes, Ben. Who had the biggest glow up of all of the kid to adult versions in the second one, played by Jay Ryan from Beauty and the Beast on the CW, primarily. I think, personally, with love triangles, unless they are truly crucial, and granted, I've not read the book, so if there's a love triangle in the book, I'm glad you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I love that. This helps me help you. But in general, love triangles get in the way of their own character growth, because a lot of times in that movie you had Bill, and in the first one ends up kissing Beverly, and that comes back in the second movie, and then you had Jay constantly pining after Bev, when if he had just said, oh, I wrote this, I did this back when we were kids, it would have solved the problem. And that's what you have with love triangles. And really, if we're looking at a side trope to that, is miscommunication and or just miscommunication. What I also wanted to bring, the second thing I wanted to bring up primarily, is the inconsistent lore of the It franchise. I mean that more with in the first movie, where you had the Deadlights attack Beverly and you solved it by having Ben kiss Beverly, and that breaks her of that spell, similar to a True Love's Kiss type of scenario. You shouldn't use that same plot point, that same plot device in the next movie, and not have it be resolved in the same way. Because as a viewer, assuming in the age of streaming that they were able to somehow, whether legally or illegally, watch the movie, the first movie, to catch up with the second one, you can't just not use the same solution. In that I mean, you can't have Richie being entranced by the Deadlights and then not have Eddie kiss him. There were subtle nods to one of them not being straight in that second movie, which was kind of obvious when Richie, played by Bill Hader, and Eddie, I cannot remember who played his adult version, but that's okay. When you had Richie in his little mini story being assaulted by It, and It saying, I know who you are, Richie, I know what you're hiding, what your secret is. Which usually in that context is something relating to sexual orientation, past trauma, secret children, the list goes on. And on that same note, since they didn't have them kiss, there wasn't a convergent pairing, but if you know anything about the internet and fandom as a whole, which I will go into more in later videos, the fandom doesn't care. Or I should say, they care only enough to where canonicity of their ship can have an impact on how much works, whether it's fan art, fan fiction, general conversation, that pairing will elicit. On that note, because of the way that pairing resolved in that movie, i.e. Eddie's death, it basically became what's commonly known as bury your gays, which is a trope and issue that's been around for many, many years, which is unfortunate, because for people who are on the LGBTQ spectrum, or even beyond that, really, if you're looking for good storytelling, it's never a good sign when you have a pairing or couple that is pushed to the forefront, i.e. in other media like The 100 with Clark and Lexa, or other TV shows or movies I can't think of right now, but The 100 is a great example of that, when you have, it's confirmed, they're kissing, they're fine, they're happy, then all of a sudden one of them dies. Which is kind of what happened here in It Chapter 2. It at least had the potential to be that. And while it's not always a bad thing to bury your gays, it can be very disheartening to fans and storytellers and just people in general to be given something, especially which we saw later on in the end of the movie, where Richie went back to the covered bridge and ended up writing Richie plus, or R plus E, Richie plus Eddie. that basically confirmed to the audience that A, Richie's gay, and B, he loved Eddie. And so we're left basically sad and um, unfulfilled. And on that note, with a lot of gay couples, something I really want to see happen more, but it's a bit of a crapshoot if we're being honest, at least right now, is when you're making a piece of media, there should be more options for a character than just a singular option. Because you're not really meant to just fall in love with one person or like one person. You don't see that problem with all of the heterosexual couples. You see them dating every single person, which makes sense considering that's what we've done for the last 20, 30 or so years since the 80s or 90s, really, especially with Beverly Hills 90210 and all those shows that really emphasize the teen drama aspects of television. Um, that said, if I remember right, It Chapter 2 is based in the 80s, I think. I'm probably wrong. We'll see. So not being able to live with your what would have been his lover if he pursued it, which I think he would have, kind of makes sense given the time frame of likely the 80s, not a good time to be gay, which most people should know. But that's kind of all I have to say on that. On the note of whether there would be a third It movie, I've seen some talk about it. That said, I wouldn't really want one, especially with two of the losers being dead. Stanley having taken his life to basically spur them on, and then Eddie having died tragically for his love, basically, which is sad. Um, However, if it was like a midquel or a spin-off or basically set between the time of the first movie and the then 27-year time for this second movie, that could be interesting, following them individually, but you'd have to then explain why they're not together, what it's doing, and it would not probably work as well. Same thing with maybe an original story would be interesting, following it, or if there's another It, because I kind of think with the whole space aspect, there's probably more It's than just that singular It. It is complicated. That was a pun. I do kind of think that, kind of to end this part of it, or probably most of it, that with Losers Club, there was no love for Mike. It was sad. I mean, he did stay in Derry, so you would have thought maybe he would have hooked up with someone from Derry, but that didn't happen. If you're looking at the fan fiction aspect, people tend to put um, Mike with Bill a lot of times, or they put Bill with Stanley, but that's kind of a separate issue. So that's kind of my review of It Chapter 2. Not sure who's going to hear this, but that's okay. I kind of need a outlet to just kind of scream into a void, especially right now, because it's kind of sad and concerning with how everything is going, considering I live in the US. So there's all that to consider. If you have any recommendations for things you want me to watch, or things you want me to review, or really anything or any questions, I'll answer them to the best of my ability. If you want me to do more research, that's also good. Yeah, I'll probably post another video in the next few days or tomorrow, who knows. I'm not sure how my motivation will be, but anyway, we'll see. Yeah, it's been good talking to the camera. And I'll try to better light it next time because it's bad. It's not the worst. Anyway, next video will probably be about The Old Guard, because I watched that recently. It was amazing. I have a lot of things to say about that. I may also post a video more talking about sort of fandom in general or other pairings. I'll need to see what I want to do. Anyway, hope you guys have a good day, or I should say y'all, because that's gender neutral. I'm trying to be correct because I don't want to offend anyone. Anyway, hope you all have a good day, and talk to you again soon. Bye.